Well, hello everyone. My name is Colin Smith. I am a part of EDI's data curation team, and today I'm going to be talking about with my co-presenter, Kristen Vanderbilt, about the Information Management Code Registry and how to use it for finding and contributing software solutions for data management needs. Now, the Information Management Code Registry is a new resource for the environmental sciences community, to which many individuals and organizations have contributed along the way of developing and implementing it into its current state. And this includes several folks from the Long-Term Ecological Research Network, the Earth Science Information Partnership, and EarthCube's Antosoft project. So I just want to acknowledge those folks from the get-go. And as a community resource, community participation really guides the development and is critical to making the Information Management Code Registry relevant and valuable. So the challenge that we are addressing is the stewardship of information throughout the contemporary data lifecycle. The data lifecycle is composed of many familiar processes, such as project planning, data collection, assurance formatting, data analysis, and eventually article publication, but is also composed of some unfamiliar processes to many of us, such as creating standardized metadata to describe data entities, or for locating a suitable data repository and archiving your data there, and even using data repository discovery services to find, assess, and make use of data that others have archived out there in the world. So each of these processes requires substantial time and effort on the part of the individual researcher or information manager. And it's no surprise that the majority of time spent on what we consider information management tasks, which are the processes that I've highlighted here. That any of us that have been involved in this process are not surprised that there's a substantial amount of time devoted to these information management tasks. We all perform these tasks to varying degrees, but most of us do so as individuals in our own unique ways and within our own unique data management systems. So while many of these processes require unique customized approaches, many of them rely on standard methods and best practices, which have been or are being codified into software and then made available for sharing and reuse. But even though this is the case, or even if this was categorically the case, the software tools, the existence of these software tools, there would still be issues of being able to find the right tool for a particular task, accessing and understanding what the tool does, and finally reusing the tool and implementing it into your own workflow. So these requirements really call for a centralized knowledge base containing, ideally, all the known information management software tools, which can be easily searched, accessed, and used. So such a knowledge base facilitates transfer of skills and expertise from a group of information management software developers, which we have here on the left, and to a group needing information management tools and solutions on the right. A software registry facilitates this transfer. So software developers register the software they've created, or software they haven't created but find particularly useful. They place that into the registry, and each registered item contains rich science software metadata, which is easily created through a metadata wizard, and each registered item links out to wherever that software can be accessed. If it's in a repository someplace, or is like CRAN, or is under development in a repository such as GitHub. That linking keeps the registry lightweight and can point to wherever the resource happens to be. Users then are able to search the registry to find, assess, and reuse the software for their own workflows. And an important feature of this system is feedback from the users to the developers, which facilitates a dialogue and eventually software improvement, convergence on best practices and standardized methods, and development of software solutions to meet emerging data management issues. While all this is happening in the background, a core group of maintainers act to ensure the Information Management Code Registry meets the community's needs by keeping registered content up to date, fostering communication through regular telecons, a listserv, through a Slack channel, and through Twitter. The core community of maintainers also helps to inspire development through in-person and virtual hackathons on particular projects, to highlight areas of activity within the community that may need support or attention, and by providing best practice recommendations. So the potential benefits provided by the Information Management Code Registry are a mix of short and long-term benefits. For instance, distribution of data management expertise to an expanding need. For example, the Environmental Data Initiative is now tasked with spreading the information management expertise of the LTER community to a much broader group of users that don't necessarily have that expertise. So that's one of the benefits that we are trying to achieve here, and that can realistically be achieved. And so some of the other benefits include accelerating the efficiency of information management processes, which then afford more time for other tasks that may be that need tending to, or may be of greater importance. Reducing redundancy and increasing return on investment, thus allowing investments to be directed to other areas of need. Convergence on standard methods, allowing processes to be codified into software. Facilitating open and reproducible science by encouraging citation of the software. And finally, elevating IM software as a first-class scientific product, thus awarding creators and professionals that otherwise receive little reward for their hard work. So that's an introduction to the Information Management Code Registry and why it can be valuable as a community resource. And while we now have the registry set up and open for business, thanks again to community member contributions, the registry currently exists as more of a framework and infrastructure that is not yet fleshed out and living, or a breathing resource, if a resource can be breathing, but it's not really alive yet, and it's going to take much more community involvement and participation to fully realize this, particularly adding software to the code registry, adding these software tools that we have created or that we find useful. And then on the user end, using these tools and being familiar with the code registry and how to find solutions to your needs. There's some particulars of searching the registry to find what it is that you're looking for. And then both as users and contributors of the registry, there's going to be a lot of just getting the word out and letting other people know that this resource exists in order to, build a community around it and really have it operating to be a living resource. So now Kristen and I are going to provide an orientation of how you can begin using the Information Management Code Registry Wiki and the portal and the controlled vocabulary that we have set up to begin interacting and using and contributing to the registry. So the wiki, which is it exists over there at ESIP, at the Earth Science Information Partnership, is really the project landing page for the IM Code Registry. It contains the primary resources of the registry, including the portal, best practice documentation, and the controlled vocabulary. It contains information on how to get involved with the project, listing the various ways that the IM Code Registry community communicates, and it lists also the activities that are underway, the current locales of development and events that are happening, as well as a documented history of the various telecons and meetings that the IMCR community has been a part of, as well as an overview of the IM Code Registry, a brief history of it. So with that, I'm going to stop my screen share and pass control over to my co-presenter, Kristen. Did I successfully unshare my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
good, Colin.
Great.
Okay. All right. So can you all see the slide that says Antosoft?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the IMCR portal, which we have implemented in Antosoft. And Antosoft is a product of the NSF EarthCube project. And EarthCube is a project that aims to create cyber infrastructure to improve access, sharing, and analysis of all kinds of geoscience data. And the researchers who developed Antosoft recognized that there wasn't a good solution for documenting software. So Antosoft aims to organize metadata about software into machine-readable form. So basically, Antosoft is all about promoting code reuse in order to facilitate reproducibility and open science. So the developers who came up with Antosoft describe it as a community software commons for the geosciences. And it does two things really nicely. It offers the ability to create software documentation. There's a very nice wizard that leads the person doing the documentation through a list of questions, and there are 46 metadata properties that the scientists could complete using this wizard. Also, Antosoft facilitates software discovery via a nice faceted search. And the only reason the faceted search is possible is because the metadata is in a structured format and it is machine readable. So there are several communities that have Antosoft portals. We are one. The USGS has one that's fairly well populated. And then there's another organization called Crescent, I think, which is the Coral Reef Science and Cyber Infrastructure Network. And they have a portal that's fairly well populated also. So this is what the landing page looks like when you go to the IMCR registry. And it says it's a software repository, but as Colin mentioned, it's not a repository. The code actually lives in GitHub or in some other development platform. This is just the metadata, and it points to the code. So what you see is the list of software programs that we have already registered in the IMCR. And on the right here is, maybe I need this little pointer. On the right here is that faceted search. And so you can search through the whole metadata by filling in this box here, or you can search by author, keywords, the language that the code is written in, the license under which the code is released, the operating system it runs on, or the publisher. And you can also combine these facets to search across a couple of things at once. So I'd like to convince you that the metadata that needs to be entered in order to register software is, it's a really straightforward process, basically. And so for starters, let's take a look at this GCE toolbox for MATLAB, which is software that I registered. All right. So this is the GCE data toolbox for MATLAB. It was created by Wade Sheldon. And what one can immediately see here if one is searching for software is over here on the right is this pie. And what the pie shows is that there's only a small amount of metadata that's actually been entered for this software program. And Antosoft provides 6 categories of metadata. There's identification metadata, understanding the software, executing, doing research, getting support, and then update. And what you see here is I was able to fill in the identification components of the metadata, but was able to do less with respect to understanding and executing the software, and nothing at all with respect to these other things. So if you were to be filling in metadata, you would be offered a wizard that would basically be asking these questions for identification. What is the software called? What is a short description for this software? What are general categories for this software? And these are the keywords. And I'm going to return to this later because what we found is that there is, even though we have a small number of programs registered so far at this point, we have a plethora of keywords, some of which have very similar meanings. And so we need to constrain that list and create a controlled vocabulary. And I'll talk about that more in a little bit. And is there a project website for the software? Yes, there is. I was able to enter that. Okay, now this next pie piece is about understanding the software, and there are 2 components to that. There's trust, whether or not a software reuser, potentially a reuser, could feel like very comfortable using the software knowing that it's considered trustworthy. And the other piece is the domain knowledge. Which domains is the software applicable to? So I didn't fill out a great deal of this. There's a question: who created the software? I knew this, but there were many other pieces, and some of them are optional, like is there any information about uses of this software, for instance? Are there any statistics of its use? Has the software been adopted in a project or an organization or by a person? Because by having that information, a potential software user might be able to, have some confidence relative to reusing the software. So, and the other piece of that understand piece of the pie is what domain the software is useful for. I know it's used in ecology and for climate data. And then I found this piece here that was on the project website, and I added that because it describes pretty well all the different ways that this software can be used. So that would be helpful too for someone seeking information about the software. All right, now the next piece of the pie is the execute piece, and this is about how does one access the code, how do you install it, and how do you use it. So the questions here are, what is the URL for the code? That's where you'd go to get it. And then this is the license under which it is released. Okay, so to look at the other 3 pie pieces here, let's take a look at a different program. This is the EML assembly line, and it was developed by Colin, and it's a very nice piece of software that works really well, and he has fortunately been able to give us an example of almost completely filled in pie. So the locate information is just like it as in the previous example. But here is the understand component of the second pie piece that's better filled out. And so it includes information about what the useful features are, who the publisher is, and down here, most notably, has the software been adopted in a project, organization, or by a person? Well, yes, it has. It's used in a variety of different projects. So a potential user could feel like it's probably pretty well controlled for bugs and so on. It's a good quality and easy to use, or at least readily used. And let's see, skipping ahead to the execute piece. It includes, again, the code location, the license, the online documentation. It is run in R, and it runs in these operating systems. Okay. Now, the do research piece contains 3 components. Does the software run with other programs is one piece. And then what are the inputs and the outputs that are required for the software? And here it shows that the inputs are of particular file types, comma or tab delimited tables. This is not required, but an acceptable file type. So that's the kind of inputs it requires. It indicates that input parameters are specific to function calls. And it says that the file output is an extensible markup language document in ecological metadata language. And interestingly, are there any relevant data catalogs that can be used with this software? Well, yes, there happens to be one in this case, and it's the Pasta Plus software data repository. And does this software interoperate with any other kinds of software? Well, any software requiring EML as an input could definitely take advantage of this program. Okay, getting support is fairly straightforward. I imagine that for most software, this pie piece will be bright red because people don't have time to help everyone learn the software. In this case, Colin's happy to give one-on-one support via email or video chat. And then finally, there's the update piece, which is about how the software is being maintained, is it being contributed to, and what versions are available. And so that's the kind of information that is here. All right, so I hope you can see that it's a fairly straightforward process. The wizard would lead someone who is entering this metadata just through these questions. And I think if you had developed the software yourself, it would be quite straightforward to enter. Okay, let's return to this landing page then for the IMCR. And I've done a query here over here in this faceted search. And I've queried for the author Colin and then for the keyword discovery. And I came up with these 2 data packages here, or excuse me, software programs here. But of interest here is this list of keywords, okay? At this point, we have just asked folks contributing to the registry to choose their own keywords. And we have found that there have been a lot of keywords entered that may have quite similar meanings, and such as describing maybe is a little similar to documentation, which might be a little similar to metadata handling, for instance. So what we've decided to do is develop a controlled vocabulary. So the controlled vocabulary will be a list of words that people registering software rather, will choose from. And so in that way, we'll have a smaller number of categories that can be indexed, and we'll be able to more readily find software with those defined categories. So a controlled vocabulary is basically an organized arrangement of words and phrases that are used to index content. And so generally what it has will be some broad categories of terms within which there will be narrower terms. And so you try and find the most precise keyword to use. And it will constrain the terms that can be selected as keywords going into the IMCR. And it will be used to retrieve content through browsing or searching. That's the whole point of having a controlled vocabulary. And overall, it's going to improve discoverability quite a bit. So this is a project that Colin has been spearheading, but it's been done with input and consultation with that ESIP working group that we have. The cluster meets once a month to talk about various topics related to the IMCR. And the group basically recommended that the vocabulary terms fall into the different stages of this data lifecycle. So there will be vocabulary terms under a broader term for, say, information management planning, if the software has something to do with that, or data collection, if the software is about data collection, or quality assuring and formatting data, if the software happens to be about just developing metadata, it would fall into this category here, and so on with preserve, discover, and integrate. And as information managers, we don't spend a lot of time analyzing and publishing the data, so there are not keywords for those parts of the data lifecycle. Okay. Hang on a moment. Trying to bring up the, here we go. Okay. So hopefully you should now be seeing the Information Management Code Registry Thesaurus.
Yep.
It has been implemented in Temetres with the help of John Porter, who sort of the guru of controlled vocabularies for the LTR community. And what you see here are the categories that I described as being from the data lifecycle. So for instance, for someone entering software that has to do with describing metadata, you might look into these narrower terms under describing and choose authoring or documenting or reporting or semantic translation and so on. And let's see. Maybe under discovery, what kinds of terms are there? You know, crawling, delivery, mining, retrieval, searching, and user interface. And this is a work in progress. And so Colin is accepting comments on this product as of now. And we would love it if you would all, or anybody out there would like to take a look through these categories and see if we've missed something or what we should add. Okay, so. Okay, all right, and that brings us to the conclusion of the sort of informational part of the presentation. We would love it if some of you would participate in the IMCR. It is open to the information management community to use and to contribute to. And these resources that are listed here are also on the Wiki page that Colin showed earlier. You can visit the Wiki here. If you're interested in finding what's in our portal, you can visit this link here. And if you'd like to register some software, you can simply request a login and you can go ahead and do that. That would be great. Controlled vocabulary is here. We do have a monthly teleconference, and if you would like to join our listserv for the ESIP cluster on the IMCR, we would be happy to have you there, and you would get announcements about the telecon, what we're going to be talking about. We're happy to be emailed by anyone who has questions, comments. We do have a presence on Slack as well and on Twitter. So please join us. And we'd like to thank these organizations for supporting us as we develop the IMCR. Thanks. Does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Kristen, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, the obvious question is, what is the process for actually getting a login to actually complete the rest of the metadata profile for our software, because all that information is known. So that's
right.
Obvious. Yeah, I know you're just putting in some demo entries, right. But all of that information, including use tracking and use, is obviously known. So
right. Yes, you can just go to the IMCR portal, and at the top there's a little register. Right. And you can register there.
And then obviously you, as probably the information owner of that record, you would need to give me permission to, or is this just?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not even sure that they have that functionality in Antosoft. I will have to check it. Okay. And see if I can give you what is already there. Otherwise, it'll just take you moments to.
Yeah, if that's not possible, then obviously I could send you like a bulleted Word document with the content to put in it.
Right. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Second question is, like there obviously there are major scope issues in different software projects, and some of this, I think there's going to be, some of this information, it's kind of a little bit difficult to characterize at the same level when you're talking about a little piece of code versus frameworks, and so I think that. Is there a strategy for like basically either different sets of keywords, or at least just playing by ear as we go along and fill this out, in terms of how to accommodate the existing vocabularies, and then suggest changes as you hit apple oranges issues? Okay, just kind of just organically at this point.
I think so. We thought we would start with this controlled vocabulary and see how it works, and then modify as we go along, because we're just not sure how it's going to go. We do want to accommodate, you know, just basically small snippets of code and more complicated software. So we may need a keyword for those kinds of categorization.
Right, like, you know, whether this is basically a very specific code for a very specific problem set or a broad class of, you know, data management activities, you know, something like that, kind of a scoping code of some sort.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, that is something that we're considering, another facet of the controlled vocabulary to flesh out, as well as science domain, because the community of participants is fairly wide beyond, you know, the ecological discipline in which I'm most familiar, and some of us here at EDI are. So that's another part of the vocab that we're going to expand is science domain.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. It's important to be able to search on those features that you just explained.
Right, and also I think I didn't catch all of the vocabulary terms. I'll drill down and look a little bit more, but it might be, you know, I think that would also factor into essentially how much investment would be required to, you know, like pick up and use something. If you're talking about essentially an R package to handle a very specific type of data analysis chore or plot or whatever, that's very straightforward. But if you need a learning curve to set up an entire Python or MATLAB framework to do something and then get your data into their data models and, you know, use it, I mean, that's a different level of commitment for a different class of problems. So there might be, you know, something like, you know, what's involved in implementing, you know, there's a difference between, like, you know, pulling something from a CRAN repository and using it for one thing versus learning a whole piece of software. So that I'll have that in mind as I look at these kind of vocab, the ontology terms.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank
Great.
you.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Did anybody come today hoping to find code on a specific theme?
Sounds like Mike's coming through.
Yeah, thanks. So actually going back to, that's an interesting question, but let me just back up one step. Would these repositories be appropriate for software as a service or some kind of data service or web service that, you know, you would put in some input and get something out, but you didn't necessarily download a tool? You know, like say a very simple example would be a web service that validates a species name or something like that. You know, looking over those repositories, I didn't see anything that met that, but I was interested what your take on that would be.
In my opinion, it can be supported with the Antosoft ontology, a description of such a resource, and should be included, because, you know, those are very powerful services that are provided for information managers and scientists in general. Yes, is my answer to that question.
Yeah. Completely agree.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so it may be beneficial for us to highlight the types of software entities that the code registry can handle, or that we're, you know, shooting for with this. So maybe that's some content that we'll have to add to the Wiki landing page just to make that clear. But yeah, thanks for the question. All right.
Does anyone have some code that they would like to contribute?
Yeah, I have a lot out there. I just, you know, carving out a little bit of time each week to add new things. But, you know, my expertise is very limited in the information management realm. There's really just a few of those processes that I'm familiar and do fairly well at. And so, yeah, relying on the community more broadly to kind of fill in those knowledge gaps that us in the core maintainer group have, to make it more broadly applicable is definitely important. But
I guess one thing that would be pretty helpful for folks who like to use the GCE data toolbox, which is pretty amazing toolbox, would be an example, Wade, of your automated workflow.
Sure. I think, you know, like a good demo where you go from a Campbell logger file to like a dashboard web page, or, you know, distributable data products, that kind of thing, which those demos are included in the toolbox, but something that actually, you know, kind of illustrates that particular process, you know, in an easy, you know, way. I mean, so that's actually already kind of covered, but I mean, it would make it more upfront and part of a tutorial kind of process would be, there's definitely room for.
Yeah.
Like we even have like sample data and some other stuff that gets distributed with it, like in a demo directory. So part of that was, you know, developed during the LNO funded training workshops a couple of years ago, but some of those could be updated and brought more up front.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
And yeah, I did register on the Antosoft, but you can't go in and edit that existing record, not surprisingly. Okay. So we'll have to look at that.
Yeah, that may be a feature request we can place with them, because that sure seems to be, you know, some functionality that you would want is people can register, and you maybe have a team of people completing the metadata for a particular item. So I think that definitely seems like a reasonable request. We'll make that, and then, you know, if that doesn't stick with them, then we'll find some other way, as you suggest, Wade, maybe just sending Kristen an email with a bulleted list of stuff.
Like, that's your thank you for pre-entering someone's software. 100 cut and paste.
Exactly.
All right. Well, if there aren't any more other questions, we of course would welcome any further interaction that you'd like with us. If you'd like to join the ESIP list or anything like that, please give us a jingle, and we'll do that for sure.
Yeah. Contribute software that you find useful to yourself, software that you've developed that, you know, as Kristen mentioned, it doesn't necessarily need to be professional grade software. It can be, you know, more of a rudimentary level, or not a complete software package, but maybe just some functionality that's really useful, or could be really useful to people. Definitely welcome that. And just put in a plug here for the an activity we have coming up here pretty soon, which is kind of the first one that we've run and are a little bit excited about, is a virtual hackathon, which is going to be, let's see, I'm pulling up the information right now. It's November 14th, Wednesday, and we're going to be basically, we're going to have three, we're going to be focusing on 3 projects, and the projects are one that ingests standardized data formats, one that develops QA/QC procedures, and another one that helps clean taxonomy data. And we're going to have 3 Zoom channels open from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the leaders of the projects are going to be there, and people that have participated in helping to develop those projects in the past will be there. And we welcome new people to join and, you know, test out this way of hosting a hackathon. And we're really just I'm looking forward to it, taking a break from my normal workload and you know, moving a project that I've been associated with for a while, moving that forward a bit. So, but yeah, check out our wiki. We've got lots of ways you can get involved. Yeah, stay tuned.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.